Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another Sunday. We have our Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle.
And I'm the second of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali, Noor
Yes,
Kyle's faithful sidekick.
my beloved sidekick, yes. So, thank you for joining us, whether you're here live, here on Zoom, or you're watching on the YouTube replay. We welcome you and we're happy to have you here. Of course, we need to do our brief YouTube spiel.
Can
Mushtaq,
I
would
do
you
it this
like to
time?
do it this
Yeah, I want
time?
to do it.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, like our video, subscribe to our channel, make a comment. We love it. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. And of course, we do have our Sweden in-person retreat happening in May. This is May 8th through 12th of 2023. That's going to be happening in southern Sweden, and we still have spots open. We would love to have you join us. We have many cool people joining us. Well, several. I wouldn't say many. We have an intimate number of people joining us. It's awesome. Really looking
It's going
forward
to
to
be
that.
more fun than a circus clown car.
And the location is beautiful, and we're already thinking of some cool stuff to do. So if you'd like to join us for that and learn more about it, you can look in the description and we will have a link to that below. So sign up for that mailing list and you will be taken through the steps you'll need to take to sign up for that, to register, to submit your payment, etc., etc. Hope to see you there. All right. So
And we will be revealing at least 3 of the secrets of the universe there.
yep.
Yep.
3 big ones, yes. So look forward to that, as we are, I hope, God willing. And without further ado, I think that's all we have for announcements currently, and we can get started. So, this is kind of a special theme for us this evening. We
In
are,
other words, we aim to misbehave.
yeah, we're gonna be like not redoing a talk we've done from the past, but coming to the subject of vertical versus horizontal teaching and authority, but from a different lens, a bit more framework and nuance, I would say. So this should be an interesting evening. We're going to be talking about reframing power dynamics, and we're going to review how that's taken place within the Sufi tradition, within the Gurdjieff work, and also here within the Nine-Sided Circle.
Yeah. So
And
tell us all about
yeah.
it.
So, those of you who have been with us for a long time may remember when we were talking about how, traditionally speaking, especially in traditions of lineage that go back 1,000 years, 2,000 years, further back than that, there's definitely this sense of there being a top-down hierarchy in which you have some kind of teacher, a guru in the classical sense, and today in the kind of contemporary, a weird authority figure sense. And there's a sense that the students are below them, and there's also a hierarchy of students. So you have this top-down system in which nobody really questions the authority of the teacher. You're very careful about the things that you might ask them. There may be a bit of intimidation involved that is silencing, shall we say. And we're going to get further into this, but really essentially what we want to talk about is the evolution from that to something a little different these days.
Yeah. And this is something that it's a problem. And a lot of teachers know it's a problem, though they don't know how to fix it. For example, years ago, when I was a young Sufi, everybody sing along, when I was a young Sufi, I was in a Panera in Iran, and the murshid was walking through, and he stopped and asked one of the dervishes, "What should I do about this wall here?" And the dervish replied, "Whatever master wants is what is best." And The Murshid looked at him and said, no, I want an actual answer. Tell me what you think. And this is a problem with vertical structures in teaching. There is an axiom which states that, and I wrote it down, it's called the SNAFU Principle, according to an old friend of mine. Would you like to read us the SNAFU Principle?
Sure. Okay, let's see. Yes. This is a quote from Robert Anton Wilson, which reads as follows. There's a maxim called the SNAFU Principle, which states that true communication is only possible between equals, because where there is a power asymmetry, the subordinate will tend to tell the superior what the superior wants to hear, and the superior will tend to tell the subordinate only that which preserves their own superiority,
Think about that for a second. In a hierarchical structure, you are at risk if you tell the person above you the truth. Bad things might happen. And if you are at the top of that hierarchy, you are at a lot of risks. One of which is you have no idea what's really going on within the group. And that can be, a friend of mine who was a spiritual teacher and thought it was his place to bust everybody's ego in a more public group, started chastising this guy for something, I don't even know what. And the guy got up, walked over and clocked him, knocked him on his ass.
Knocked your friend on his ass? Or?
Knocked my friend on his ass, yes, because he was being very insulting. And though that is inappropriate in most cases, it is something that my friend never expected to happen because he thought he was too exalted. But he wasn't that exalted in the mind of this guy.
Oh, okay. So he thought, your friend thought, right?
That he could do anything he wanted. Yeah. That there could be no consequences because he was at the top of the heap.
Got it.
And you're only at the top of the heap if everybody agrees that you are, whether you think that you're the most enlightened person on the planet or not.
And with this particular person, your friend hit a nerve and...
Yeah. And like I said, it was inappropriate behavior. It was juvenile. But at the same time, I couldn't fault the guy for it. Could not fault him for it. I might have smacked the guy myself in similar circumstances, back then anyway, when I was young and foolish and impetuous.
Impetuous.
I was impetuous back in the day, but instead I got the guy out of there before my friend's students tore him to pieces. But I always found that amusing. And the look on his face when he got punched was priceless. The universe gave him feedback that he was not expecting. So anyway, we have this idea, and this has been the way of things for thousands of years, a top-down hierarchy of the enlightened master on top and everybody else beneath. And there is no way in a hierarchy like that that anybody else can ever rise to the level of the master. This is an important thing.
You're just waiting for them to die and then someone...
Yeah, the master themselves will, and I'm using the term master pretty tongue-in-cheek, but the master themselves will make sure that nobody reaches their level. And that includes driving people out if they get to know too much. Something that I've seen over and over again in groups. You start learning too much and finding your own center, if you're in the wrong group, you're not going to be in there for very long. And this can be a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have cults. You have Scientology, you have, all of the basic cults. Look at Keith Raniere and Nexium, classic example of this crap. On the other end of the spectrum, you have people who are sincere teachers that are trying their best to impart their knowledge to their students, but don't know any way other than this way to do it. And in today's world, this way is more often than not doomed to failure. And it leads to abuse. You don't have to believe that, but you can check it out and see. So there are any number of teachers. A lot of Sufi teachers fall into the second category, where they sincerely want their students to succeed, and they don't know how to teach them other than the master-disciple model, other than the hierarchical model. And it's not that they're cult leaders or they want to be cult leaders or anything. They just never picked up a new tool set.
And the students end up being quote unquote sheep, but it's almost like the system, the established system has trained them to be that way rather than the teacher being like, this is what I want from you.
Yeah. And it tends to keep the students in juvenile state. I remember one Sufi group I was hanging out with, one of the senior students said, when you speak with the master, you must ask permission before you do anything. If you're a member of this group, you must ask permission before you move or change jobs or ask a girl out. You need the master's permission. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. I don't think that I need his permission. I'm pretty sure that if I want to ask a girl out, I can do that all on my own authority. As you can imagine, I didn't hang around there that long. And it wasn't because this guy was a bad person. He wasn't a bad person. He was a nice person. But that was the model that they worked on. Mm-hmm. You must be like a corpse in the corpse washer's hand, was a saying that we would hear all the time. Which means that you will inevitably end up being passive your whole life, and you really can't become an adult human being doing that.
Yep.
So this is the main problem today in the spiritual marketplace, is that you have a lot of this, and it gives you a spectrum between good people who don't know any other way to do it, all the way into cult leaders. Because the cult leader looks at this and goes, yeah, this is my jam. I am at the top of the heap and everybody is beneath me, and y'all are going to do what I say because I am the enlightened one. One example of that is the Fellowship of Friends, where you have this guy who, if you want to know about this as a cult, and this is a Gurdjieff cult, more or less.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can look them up. There's some pretty good stuff out there on them. And it's like, here's this guy at the top, and he's surrounded with beautiful art and people who will do anything that he says and serve him in every way possible. And not a single one of them has ever even approximated his state according to him. I ran across these people years ago when I was a young dervish, and I went to one of their meetings because at the time they were going around from town to town and putting on these talks about this guy in this school, and they called themselves a Gurdjieff Ouspensky school. And I attended the meeting. I had just come from turning class because my teacher had sent me to the Mevlevis to learn how to do the turn in the traditional Mevlevi fashion, which is to say I came there in a really good altered state. Not the kind of altered state where you've smoked too much ganja, but the kind of altered state where all of your perceptions are opened up. And these guys went through this whole talk. They talked out of a couple of Ouspensky's books, his possible psychology one, I forget the full name of it, Man's Possible Psychology of Being or something like that. And they pulled out tarot cards, or playing cards actually, not even tarot cards, and used them as examples of how the different men were in all of this. And they said that their teacher studied for 10 years before he had become man number 7, which is like the highest man. And at the end of it, they asked for questions, and I put my hand up, and I hadn't even intended to ask questions, but I put my hand up and I said, "How long has your teacher been teaching?" And they said, "It's been 20 years now." I put my hand up again and said, "In that time, how many people has he raised to his level?" And they looked at me like I was speaking Martian. And they said, "No one." At that point, I literally, I stood up at that point, thanked them for their time, and walked out. Because if you're teaching for 20 years and you have not raised a single person to your level, you don't know how to teach. But more than that, and I didn't realize this for a while, the thing that got me is that all of them carried an internal presupposition that they would never be at this guy's level. And as far as I'm concerned, if y'all can't reach full enlightenment, you have no need to hang out with somebody who's telling you that they're fully enlightened. Yeah, it's like my state, it's okay, but it doesn't do you any good. What does you good is you raising your own state up. Does that make sense? I know we're going on fairly long on this, but I want to lay down the groundwork before we talk about the other.
Yeah, so I'll just chime in with a couple of the comments that have
Yes, please.
So, James, you were referring to the Fellowship of Friends, and James referred to them as the people of the bookmark, because they always stick their bookmarks in random books at
Oh
used
God,
bookstores
yeah.
and stuff. Esoteric bookstores, yes. So, surprise, surprise when you find those. And then Rishabh said, just clarifying the name of the book is
Yeah.
The Psychology of Man's Possible Evolution by Ouspensky, was it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, do we have any thoughts or questions so far?
Yeah, before we get on to the second part.
Okay. Em, yeah.
Okay, so I agree with everything Mushtaq said, and I believe there was a time when it actually worked because the chefs were real chefs. They knew what they were doing, and their aim was to take the student out of juvenile state and lead them to their higher self and their rightly guided self. And in order to get that process done, there was the 3-tier annihilation. So there's the fenafillah, or fenafil sheikh comes first, where you annihilate yourself to your share, meaning you have no more person left, your person is the share. And so, yes, you ask everything, apparently, yeah. And like you, Mushtaq, it's just never worked for me. The ego's just too big to surrender in that level, or the sheikh is just not grand enough to trust to surrender at that level. So, but I believe there was a time when it actually did work, and that's why we've got these these models that came so far into our generation, but now really it takes courage to say, hey there, okay, this does not work anymore. But we can't just sit around and cry about that. We have to then say, okay, well then, are we game enough to find what does work? And I think a lot of people fall into the trap of mismatching these, taking a little bit from there, a little bit from there, and then coming up with things. But without trying, how do we know? So again, I guess we have to be willing to take the risk to do things a bit differently in order to find that. And for that, I loved the entry of today's, that quote you read, Noor, of yeah, you have to come and find like-minded and like-hearted people vibrating from the same space in order for the new to maybe to flourish out of that. That's my hope. And
Yeah.
as long as it takes, I'm going to hang around, and where I need to, I'll surrender my ego, you know, as long as it feels right to this heart.
Yeah. Here's something that's cool. From the beginning of our tariqa, from the beginning of our lineage, we have denied the usefulness of fana fi sheikh and fana fi pir and fana fi rasul and fana filah is great, but we have an entirely different model that does not require you to give up your person to another person. And we should, Nor, make a note that we should probably talk about that
Yeah, we should.
at some point, because it's very important.
It also goes to show, you know, different tariqat have different traditions.
Yeah,
behind
the
it.
tradition she's talking about is pretty widespread.
Yes, it is.
And the tradition that we come from is much smaller. But I think that it has its place. And I want to make myself, our tradition, yeah, our tradition has understood that we need to have something that doesn't involve a cult of personality. And I want to interject here that I am convinced that even today, there are many good teachers who follow this model. But I think follow the model of fana fi sheikh, of losing yourself in your teacher. But the circumstances of the world have changed to the point where that no longer works like it used to. And we have to change with the circumstances. This is why Noor and I are here, because we are trying to make this change with the circumstance.
To the best of our ability.
Inshallah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, James, did you have a quick thought? We're in a response to M. We need to get to the meat of our topic, so I don't want to
Meat of the topic.
This may be kind of obvious, but if you're teaching for a couple of decades and no one is coming up, then either deliberately or inadvertently, you must be reinforcing an infantile or eliciting infantile positions from your students. Sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was all.
And
that was all.
yeah, and I've seen this over and over again. And what often happens, and I had two friends, and these people were both my friends, and I watched them do it going, dude, what are you doing? They would train people. One of them was a Sufi, the other was Native American. And so this is cross-cultural here. They would train people, and their people would start getting good. And if their people got too good, they would literally drive them away. If they perceived a threat to their pinnacle on the hierarchy, they would find a way to chase them off.
So this wasn't like a, okay, birdie, out of the nest thing. This was like,
No.
get the hell out because I'm not happy you're here.
Yeah, though they would sometimes couch it as get out of the nest, but it was always drive away the people who had really begun to transform themselves because they were a threat to the hierarchy.
Bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was very sad. But let me tell you about a whole other way to do this. And this,
is here too. I don't know.
say what?
Hind had a thought.
Yeah, okay, Hind, lay it on
Yeah.
us.
Yes, yes, just to add to what you said and what Em said, we have the same thing in Morocco and even here in Canada. The Tariqa, it's Bouchishia.
Mhm.
And there is that kind of, once you are murid, you have to ask permission for everything you want to do. You know, especially every big decision you want to make, you have to have the permission. And yeah, that's true. It's not at our time, it's not something that works because it's kind of, it's like a dependency. You depend,
Yes,
depend on everything. So you don't, you don't, you know, it's like you stop your mind. You don't think by your own. It's good to have sheikh and teacher to guide you, but not to choose for you, because
yes.
this is
Yeah.
our challenge to do the right choices.
Thanks, Hind. Absolutely. All right. So hold on to your questions, everybody, or your thoughts, and we'll definitely come back to those. But yeah, Mushtaq, let's get into this. Yeah.
Yeah, so horizontal teaching. In the movie, Meetings with Remarkable Men, and possibly in the book too, though I couldn't find the passage in the book when I looked for it today, there is a scene where Gurdjieff and one of his buddies is sitting with teachers of the World Brotherhood, whatever that is, and they're talking about teaching. And one of them says, we believe that the student and the teacher, so-called, create the teaching together. And I thought that that was such a brilliant statement. That is the statement of horizontal learning. Horizontal teaching, horizontal learning says that we are all equal. There are no masters. There are no slaves. Each one of us is an inwardness, and that inwardness must be respected. The teacher will know more on the subject than the student. That's why the student is there. But that does not make the teacher better than the student in any way. That does not give the teacher any inherent authority over the student. And that basically is, as I like to say, all dervishes, no sheikhs. We're all bozos on this bus. We're all just here.
Yeah. I mean, we can think of it as a sharing of a resource, which is
Yeah,
expertise and experience. And others can benefit from sharing of that. But that doesn't necessitate a power hierarchy per se.
yeah. And that necessitates an entirely different kind of teaching and learning. There has to be respect, and the respect has to be mutual. The teacher must respect the student as much as the student respects the teacher. There has to be a whole different kind of teaching. I'm going to use, and I hope Wael doesn't mind. Wael is my murid. He's my student. And he comes to me with, sometimes problems at work or decisions that he wants to make. And I will never tell him what to do. I will never give him permission to do anything. What I will do is talk the situation over with him and listen to his concerns and tell him some of my concerns. And then at the end of the conversation, he decides what it is that he wants to do, not me. And that's how we roll in this tarika. It's not my job to order him around. It's my job to be a resource to him, to give him the benefit of my experience and to let him decide for himself, because he's always going to know best for him. Even if he doesn't know that he knows, even if he makes the wrong decision, that's okay. I mean, when Noor was a student, I think I actually ordered her to do something once in all of the years we worked together.
And that was because I was about to make an irresponsible choice, which was going to hurt me and someone else. And I understood where he was coming from.
Yeah.
And ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, I could have done whatever I wanted, but I knew.
Yeah, you could always do whatever you want.
Yeah, and yet I understood he was giving it that sense of weightiness because he wanted me to really sit with it. And I'm, it doesn't come to that often, ever, really, aside from that one time. But
Yeah, and that was an exceptional time. You were under huge amounts of
Yeah.
stress. Things were going crazy in your life. You had been kicked in the slats 3 or 4 times.
I was very vulnerable, and I
Yeah,
was
you were,
vulnerable
and
to
that was just, let's
stupid
protect Noor.
decision making. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, but I mean, again, if we want to talk
And she's
about
occasionally ordered me around, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, I tend to be pretty low key, but when I feel like something is really important, I definitely get on his case about it. So that's an example, I think, of, I didn't start out as a teacher. I had to go through a little bit of quote unquote teacher training, a lot of teacher training, if we want to consider what the past several years have been for me. But through that, I learned how to be a teacher who does this sense of collaboration and dialogue and sharing of, as you said, Mushtaq, concerns, if any, hearing what the other person has to say and making suggestions that come from my well of expertise and experience. And people can take or leave that. That's up to them.
Yeah. And it's important for us because God knows we have a hard enough time making decisions for ourselves, let
Yeah.
alone taking on the burden of making decisions for other people.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of consent that comes into this because I mean, I don't necessarily want to devote a ton of energy to someone who feels like my time is not, there isn't a sense of mutuality there. If there's not a sense of mutuality, if there's not a sense of consensual exchange of feedback and wisdom and collaboration, then what are we even doing? What's the point?
Yeah. So how do we get there? This is important. How do we get to this place? There is a couple of steps I'm sure of. One is this idea of mutual respect. It's what we call in the business adab. Adab is an Arabic word, and it translates as respect, but it means something way deeper than that. It's how you behave in the world. It is the proper behavior, not from a list of rules that you find in a book somewhere, but from the rules that your heart tells you is appropriate when you begin to develop real objective conscience.
Conscience is definitely
Conscience is the big thing. So we all work to develop adab between each other. This is, I mean, everybody talks about, oh, you must have the adab to the teacher, but the teacher needs to have adab to the student too. It goes both ways. And the basis of that is this idea of objective conscience and perceiving the other as subject. This leads to the next part, which is to approach the world, and especially the school, with what we call loving kindness. Loving kindness is not just love and not just kindness. And we did a whole talk on this, and I'll put a link to it because y'all should go back and listen to that one sometime. It's pretty good. And that means that you act towards everybody in the school with this sense of, this person and I are connected. They are my friend. I care for them, and I will temper my actions so that I act towards them with kindness. This means that more often than not, you're not going to do the popular things like tough love, right? Most of the time, tough love is just a way to beat somebody down, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there are times when you have to go, well, no, you can't do that. You can't do that to me. It's not allowed. I'm sorry. Line stops here. But most of the time, bashing people about their flaws is not love. I'm sorry, it just isn't. And so we respond to the world with this concept of loving kindness.
It doesn't necessarily look soft and squishy. And,
No, it's not soft and squishy. Sometimes
it's
is
got
powerful.
Form to it. It's got
Yeah.
substance to it. Yeah. It's not the same as being a pushover or, you know, you respond to, yeah, I mean, fairness is important, right? And
Yeah.
what that looks like is going to be contextual. But this is not about just leaning into passivity.
Yeah. So when we come to vertical teaching, within this teaching, the only people that respond to it are what Gurdjieff called, and I hate the term, man 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
Human being 1, 2, and 3.
we often try to reframe it
Yeah.
as human or human being.
Yeah. And you can use this as a model for virtually every group out there, whether they are a relatively healthy authoritarian group or whether they're a cult or anywhere on the spectrum. So man 1 is going to be responding more towards a teacher, a leader that is a nurturing mother, even if they're male.
The archetype of the mother.
Yeah, the archetype of the nurturing mother. And all of these groups are going to have all three of these blended in. One will tend to be more prominent than the other two.
And you'll
So
see what we mean
yeah.
as we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Examples of this would be like Mary Baker Eddy, Teal Swan. Who else do we think of?
I mean, I think Teal Swan was the big one.
Yeah, Teal Swan is the living one, and she is a mother archetype for her people. And this is not to say that anybody we're mentioning are cults. This is just the authoritarian method. So people who fall under the influence of man 2, mostly, are going to be the strong father.
Again, an archetype can be male or female.
Yeah, can be male or female. But for this, Tony Robbins. I am strong, I am powerful, and if you listen to me and follow my instructions to the letter, you can be strong and powerful too. right? This is not saying that Tony is a cult leader. This is just to say this is the authoritarian way of doing things. Scientology is another one. They are like totally do it like this, and this, and don't waver.
There's something very regimented about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now for Man 3, this is the more intellectualized side. And so J. Krishnamurti is no, he's not an example of this, excuse me.
Drop
Forget that. Yeah, who did we come up with as an example for this?
E.D. Ouspensky.
Yeah, Ouspensky. I'm blocking Ouspensky out of my mind tonight in the worst possible way. Yeah, Ouspensky is a perfect example of this. Ouspensky believed that there was a system, and that if we could know this system and follow it exactly, we would achieve what we were looking for. This is why he split from Gurdjieff, because Gurdjieff kept telling him, no, there's no system like that. That's not how it works. Gurdjieff might also be one, because Gurdjieff was definitely authoritarian. And again, this does not mean that they were cultists. It just means that they were on that authoritarian vertical spectrum. Now, on the other hand, in the horizontal spectrum, we have people like J. Krishnamurti, one of my favorite dudes, who, if you know his story, the Theosophist basically raised him to be the Maitreya, the coming Messiah. And on the day that he was supposed to take this mantle on, he was a young man in India, he walked up to the stage in front of thousands of people and said, no, I'm not going to do this. Think for your own selves. You don't need a master. And he walked off. He could have been the head, the hierarchical head of this entire group. And he said, no, I don't want this. Think for yourselves. We know a few others. Our friend Arden Lee, she's a wild one, but she is definitely a horizontal level teacher, not a vertical level teacher. Who else did we come up with who is moving in this direction?
I mean, I thought of at least the way that the Quakers format their
Oh yeah, the
hierarchy.
Quakers, yes. The Quakers had the right idea. You know, their execution has been spotty from time to time, but they had the right idea.
Yes.
And they were early adopters of this. So
yeah, they have no priesthood at all. So for them, they
and
have
no
people who take
ministers.
certain
Yeah.
roles, but they don't have like authority figures as such. Yeah. So you show up to a meeting and basically it's entirely a collaborative thing rather than someone building the structure for it. So it's interesting for sure.
Yeah. And in our lineage, this idea has been there for a long time, because the teachers of our lineage have never allowed people to treat them with deference. You treat them with respect, but there was no like hand kissing and yes mastering or any of that kind of stuff. They totally denied that as a way to go. But that's because they didn't use the Fanafi Sheikh idea.
And I think people who have not been in those environments may find it hard to believe that those things exist in contemporary times, but they do. I've witnessed it for myself when I've gone to visit other tariqas events and such. There's an extreme deference to the sheikh, who may be sitting on some kind of big chair thing and, you know, looking hopefully benevolently out onto his people sitting on the floor. So yeah, this is something that still happens now and will continue. It's not going away. Yeah. So, Jonathan says the Baha'i faith has no priest hierarchy. I'm less familiar with them, but
Yeah, I am
so
almost
there's another example.
not familiar with them at all, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And somebody mentioned this dude called Sadhguru, and I haven't listened to enough of what he's said to say one way or the other. So I don't know. Maybe. I hope so. Because we need more of this. And the last group I should mention that is dedicated to horizontal teaching is us. This is our
Toot toot.
entire mission, is how do we teach this material? How do we teach the material of awakening in such a way that it does not require hierarchy? In such a way that we can all work together, and those of us who have useful knowledge can share it with those of us who might want it, and we're all one big happy family. And nobody has to bow to anybody, or everybody bows to everybody. Either way is good.
Yeah. And I always do, I think for the sake of transparency, like Mushtaq and I are shaping the space, obviously, but that is always in response to other currents happening around us that contribute to the shape of the space. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And we shape it with feedback from all of you. We are completely cognizant that we have been blessed by a group of people who comes and hangs out with us, who all have important knowledge and who are all really smart and all have something to offer. And rather than being threatened by it, we delight in that, because it means we don't have to work as hard.
It's nice. You don't have to
Yeah.
work as hard.
So that's pretty much what we have to say about this. What do you all think?
Jefferson.
Yes, Jefferson, talk to us.
Somebody.
Well, you said something earlier that I never asked, but perhaps this is a place to ask of how long have you been teaching and how many people have you raised to your level?
I got my ijaza. Ijaza means permission to teach in 1990. And in that time, I have raised a handful of people to a level that is, I think, is at least that of my own. Some of them I hope have surpassed me by now. We're looking at one of them. Wave to the crowd, Noor.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah. Noor at one time was one of my students. My teacher sent her to me in a very interesting way. And I think she's probably surpassed me by now, to tell you the truth. I'm not saying that to flatter her. I'm saying that because that's what I see.
Well, I
so
mean,
you can, yeah.
You're gracious. I mean, I asked that question in part because I'd never thought to ask that a poignant question that way, but also because it was uncomfortable for me to ask.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because it's a question that any real teacher should be willing to answer with no problem at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, so the other thing on the heels of that for me is, and I'm going to put this in terms that I've learned here, and I'm going to put it as a what if. What if cult, the sort of like, let's say the force of cult or hierarchical relating comes out of a mechanized conditioning? Because my discomfort to ask that question, I have a sense, comes from my own version of that.
I suspect that that's true, because I suspect you were trained to never question the authority. And that is one of the hallmarks of a cult. But go on, you know more than I do about this.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've been in a cult, and and gotten tremendous learning from it, painful openings too. And, but I mean, I don't have much to say at the moment other than one of the most interesting dynamics that I have been following since I've been engaging with you all at Nine-Sided Circle is what I say, I called it, it's the version of Mushtaq that shows up in my own mind that I argue with.
Do I ever win the argument?
Well, they go on and on and on, you know, so is it about winning? That what I got the other day was, oh, you sucker. Like this is a part of my ego self that where it wins the distraction, right? It wins the distraction game because there's a version that's arguing. And I've been recently, I think through, you know, employing practices that you're offering, have been getting this space to go, oh, hello. Okay. You know, breathe or something along those lines.
Sweet. I like that. And I like that you are doing my arguing for me, so I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for us, the important thing is you get to question us.
Yeah.
We are, you know, I wish I was so exalted that no one could question me, but I ain't. And so you get to ask that question, you know, how many people have you helped raise to your level? That's like one of the most important questions you can ask a teacher.
Yeah, I'll say this in the group that I was in, there was a time when that occurred to me and I said to myself, where are the people who've gone through this? Because it's been around for a while. Where are the people who are off in life, who are, you know, finished with this and just doing great? And because of the dynamics, you know, just pushing it back down, you know, I never got to, I mean, there might have even been moments where things like started to come out, but you know, if anybody doesn't know, I mean, the cults can have such horrendous psychological manipulation and emotional manipulation going on that you will, you know, it'll go into a crime think, right? You'll be crime thinking yourself to not even think certain things, perhaps.
Yeah. And the particular guy you're talking about, I've watched several hours of his talks now, and
We've listened to
he is
contemporary stuff together.
extremely adept at manipulation.
He probably manipulates his own self into his, you know, excuses for his own shenanigans, and that's terrifying in and of itself.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, Mushtaq has a number of years on me. So my ijaza happened around 2018, I think, 2019.
2018, I think.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like my teaching skills and my leadership skills are still a work in progress, but I do have students who could tell you, and I feel confident about this, so I'm willing to share it, that working with me has definitely changed their relationships with their partner towards the positive. It's allowed them to pursue careers that they really feel excited about and are seeing movement in, and they feel more grounded. They've been able to mitigate some of their psychosomatic symptoms and such. So even when I feel underconfident, I look at the lives that I have already been able to impact, despite, you know, the fact that it's only been just a short time in the big scheme of things that I've been in this position of quote unquote authority. But I'm applying and learning from what I'm doing every day. So the learning is never done. I can never stop and say, all right, I think I'm in a position where I can rest on my laurels now. And I know for sure, Mushtaq, that he's also learning from me every day. We're learning from each other constantly. So if he's learning from me and I know he's learning from his students, we're both keenly aware that there's never an end point to quote unquote mastery.
Yeah, I like to say that you know when you have reached the point of ultimate development in your life when you have not taken a breath in an hour. Other than that, you're still learning. There is no end to it. This concept that, oh, I'm awake, that's the end. It's all over. That's bullshit. It's something that people tell you so that they can keep your hopes up. Now, you're going to be learning for your whole life. Sorry. To the very, I mean, the moment before you die, you're going to learn something. Be ready for it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nor, too. I'll say one other thing is that one of the interesting things about the group that I was in was that I read one of the guy's books, and what I perceived in his book was that he was talking about planned obsolescence. Essentially, he was pointing to a time when there was no more need for the methodologies that he was purporting. And to me, that lit me up like, wow, really? That's how humble, right? And that's one of the quote unquote attainments, which was not an attainment in the draw for many people to come into that work is that it was about completing, it was literally, the language was, it was about completing your childhood. And it was about becoming, truly sovereign. So it had, right, it had all the markings, it had all the perfect spin, I mean, and again, I don't think it was maniacal. I don't think it was Machiavellian. I think it was just deep distortions. But there's something, Mary Parker Follett, have you ever heard of her? She was like a management executive I think in the 50s or 60s, maybe the 40s, Mary Parker Follett, but she came up with this is just because of the whole management and leadership world.
Yeah.
Power with versus power over.
Yes.
I vaguely remember that, and I always liked the idea.
Yeah, I wrote her name down so I can follow up on that. But I have heard that, yes. And ideally, that's worth striving for.
Well, I mean, it's, who knows, but like it's either it's a good sign that I'm here. I'm a cult survivor, whatever you want to call it. I've gone through that, but obviously there's a scrutiny and a rigor that I apply to you all. And I think you clearly know that we've shared about these things. I've shared things with you, and I mean, in terms of proof in the pudding for me, there's these practices that you've shared, and I apply them, and I get results from them, and that's enough, and I come back, and there's open conversations, and I'm welcome. There, maybe you were going to speak to this, but I just finished reading a book, whatever, but they talked about something like the completion of no, I'm going to get it wrong. It's like the completion of the shake and the beginning of the companion, or something like that.
Cool.
And
I have not heard of that one. Have you, Mushtak?
I don't know, but I like the concept. That sounds like you and me.
Inshallah, yeah.
Yeah, if you can think of the name of the book, either email it to us or put it up on a forum or something.
Yeah, if you can
Because
find
it sounds,
on the forum.
it's a cool concept.
I think I got it out of Tusulis's book.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a copy of that book laying around somewhere.
Thank you, Jefferson, for
Yeah.
This is really, I think this can be hard stuff to talk about for a lot
It
of
is.
people.
And thank you for getting the courage to ask the question.
Yes.
Because a lot of people don't ask that question, and everybody should. And this is another part of this. Here's something I learned from watching my friends. I have two friends who became cult leaders. They didn't start out as cult leaders, but they ended as cult leaders. And it was incredibly sad. And with one of them, I saw the exact moment of the change because we were together at the time. And with another one, it happened over a short period of time, but it happened. And I looked at that and I went, back then, if that can happen to them, it can happen to anybody. So we have built this school in part to make sure that we have the outside feedback in case, I mean, I have that fear, right? I could become a cult leader and not even notice it until it was too late. Believe it or not, I am constantly worried about that because I know me. I have a very strong personality and I can read people really well and I know all of the tricks. I've taught these tricks to most people. And I literally have nightmares sometimes about waking up and discovering that I have a cult around me. So that may sound weird, but it can sneak up on you. Your ego is very tricky. And so everybody in the nine-sided circle, all of you who actually interact with us are part of the protection that we all have against becoming that. Not just me, nor could become a cult leader. I could see her,
Where's my
Teal Swan
throne?
2.0.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
I want my big chair.
Yeah. And that's also true for every one of you. Every one of you could take this material and go off and start your own cult because it produces profound change. And if you don't assure that the people that you are helping to produce the change in understand what's going on, they could imprint on you. And then you'd have followers, which is worse than shingles. So the other thing about this, and the last thing I want to address tonight, because it's getting late, is that this is not something that is conducive to massive crowds. We can't do a Tony Robbins thing where we have 1,000 people in the audience and we're talking at all of you and you're all paying
Yeah,
us thousands of
That's
dollars.
basically never going to happen.
Yeah.
I personally don't want it to happen, even
No,
if
it can't happen because
Yeah.
this material only works in a group that's small enough for everyone to know everyone. So like with everybody here, we all know each other to one extent or another, enough that we can sit and talk and work together like this. What this also means is I'm looking at all of you and going, every single one of you is potentially a teacher of this material. And that's how it grows. You go, oh, I'm ready to teach. And Nora and I go, yeah, you're ready to teach. And then you go out and you start surrounding yourself with people who are interested in this. And then it branches. It's like a pyramid scheme for enlightenment, except that it ain't going to cost you nothing. You don't have to buy anything. I mean, would you buy a used enlightenment from me? How much would you pay for your enlightenment? Would you pay $1,000? Well, it's not going to be $1,000. Would you pay $500? What if I told you that enlightenment was free? You can pay $0 and it's yours. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, but I mean, Mushtaq, you've often used this kind of as your, I don't know, your elevator pitch, that you're a teacher of teachers. And
Yes.
that is kind of the character of this space, in that many of you are teachers in your own right, in your own fields, and we are just helping to support you in essentially becoming the best teacher that you can be, with even more tools than perhaps you had before to deepen that capacity, essentially. So that's what we want.
Yes.
We want to not clone ourselves, but
No, one is enough. Trust me, one is enough. Be yourself. Be somebody different. So who have we not heard of?
I saw that was unmuted at some point. James is unmuted, and Jonathan has his hands up. So let's start with Emina, and we'll go in order.
I just wanted to say something that Jefferson, you said that reminded me. Alongside this fana thing where you lose yourself in your teacher or your Rasul or your whatever it is that you're losing yourself in to get that enlightenment, there's a next stage, and I think this is where most of the groups have fallen into prayer of not bringing in this part of the system into the journey, and that's the terk. It's called terk. Terki sheikh, terki dunya, terki, like terk meaning dropping, letting go of. And so there comes a time when you drop the sheikh from being a sheikh, and it becomes, he or she becomes companion, friend, ukhuwa,
Yes.
loving
Yes.
connection.
Been
Yeah.
essential to
Yeah.
my relationship with Mushtaq. Yes.
And it's that letting go and dropping the attachment of that hierarchical kind of connection to a journeying together or being in the destination. Actually, it's all here and now, and then watching the unfolding of that. And in that space, you free yourself from the cult, you free yourself from the group, you free yourself even from a teaching that's kind of now become a ritual that's kind of fixated and limiting, rather than where it was once supporting you to grow, like training wheels, I guess, on a bike. Once it was supporting you, but now it's limiting you, so you need to drop it. And dropping it doesn't mean that you're dissing it. It means that you now have a different relation, a different relating with it.
Yeah.
And the horizontal model that's why so needed, especially in our time and age right now, where we can come together, and then the field itself, the field that's holding us, become almost a teacher, because in this field, all our ideas, feelings, thoughts, insights kind of manifest and merge and become all of ours when it's, facilitated properly. And yeah, that's all.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And I just had the thought that, even if, say, something like breath practice, which is pretty, we call it a fundamental breath practice for a reason. Like, even if someone were to just take that and leave and never touch anything ever that we did, I feel that they can take it completely out of context. And as long as they're doing it in a way that is safe for their bodies and getting the effects that it's meant to create, I don't really care how they frame that for themselves. If it works, it works. So they could do that their whole lives and never speak to us again, and that's fine.
So who else have we not heard of? Cherie,
James,
what do
no,
you think?
wait. We have some
James
people
first?
who- Yes,
Okay.
James first, Jonathan, then we can start bothering people.
Okay.
I've got to say, I'm really appreciative of this particular talk. And I am a shameless and unapologetic guru hunter, in that I look for how things can go wrong. So I'm always reading the exposés and the biographies without being a cynic. I think I've actually kind of forgotten the point I was going to make, but
if you need an expose on us, let me know and I'll write one for you.
Yeah, we'll help.
Well, that's why my ears pricked up several talks back when I asked you, Mushtaq, about Charles Upton, and you just said, "Well, it's not someone that you want to be like." But that automatically gets me going. Like, I want to know. I want the gossip. But it's not just gossip mongering. I am actually interested, because, like, what is the limit of any technique? What is the limit of any teacher, beyond which point it becomes either pointless or counterproductive? And it's not cynicism. I think that inquiry has to be honored, and any legitimate school will honor that inquiry. That's my point. That's all I want to say. Really just rehashing what he said.
Yeah. And, you could get in contact with Charles. He's not that hard to reach, and ask him questions and determine for
Is he
yourself.
still alive?
Is he? I thought he was. I could be
Thought he
completely
died
wrong
quite
about that.
recently.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Who knows these days? People that I came up with are dropping like flies. It's making me nervous. Yeah, I knew him back when we both lived in Marin.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So,
yeah. So anyway,
anyways, thanks,
That's my point.
James. Yeah. Look out for those sordid details. All right.
I think you
Jonathan.
do
Yeah,
too.
thanks for waiting.
Yeah, I think we should check ourselves in regards to talking about the cons of the horizontal system. And you, Mushtaq, did mention one of them, which is clearly a con, and that is pros and cons, and that is that groups can only be small, which is a serious limitation.
Thank you for mentioning this, because this was on our
Right.
list to talk about.
We-
So keep going.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple that I came up with.
sure.
One was that we're being taught as students to take ownership of our knowledge. But the one problem can be, this can lead to believing one's own untried and untested ideas.
Yes. And that was a point that we wanted to make as a con for the horizontal teaching, that it is easy to have this premature assumption of awakening and going out and thinking that you're now a teacher when you're just halfway up the mountain, as Mariana Kaplan used to say.
Yeah, I think we need to
Yeah,
talk
so
about
thanks for
that.
bringing that up, and
Right.
please continue, because I think you have more to say here.
Yeah, and the other one that I came up with was that there's a tendency for, let's say, an ignorant student to come to the group and just start talking and coming with answers and no questions. And the motivation is just to grab attention, and they're a pain, and they take attention away from the serious students.
Yep, and good teachers know how to deal with that.
And I think as students, I feel like I've done that. I've definitely
Yeah.
done that in the past.
We
just
all want
kind of-
approval at some level or
Yeah,
another.
right. I know things. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is one of the things, in order to do this horizontal teaching, you have to be an adult. You have to be moving into adulthood to get there. If you're just a child, if you're just a larvae, it's not going to work for you.
Yeah. Someone in the chat said, Jonathan, it's like you know me.
Well, I wasn't thinking of anyone in the
Right.
second example, but I
Right.
was thinking of myself in the first example I gave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we're all
and
going to see ourselves.
now consider, I started training in this stuff in the early 1970s, and it took until the 1990s for my teacher to go, yeah, you're okay to teach now.
Mm.
And I was a quick study. And I can tell you that probably every year from when I started to when I got my ijazah, I thought, oh, I must be ready now. And every year I was wrong.
I mean, that just goes to show how different we are, right?
Yeah.
Because every year you're like, now's the time. I'm the big boss now. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm there yet. And yet here I am. I have the quote unquote paper, the ijazah. So I have been saddled with this authority that sometimes I feel totally
It has been
terrified
thrust
by.
upon you all
Yes.
against your will. Take this.
Yes, exactly. So all different flavors of responses to this kind of granting of authority or waiting for it to happen, if it ever is to come at all. It could have never happened for you, Mushtaq.
It's true. And
You probably would have resented that.
yeah, And that's the thing, is when I was thinking, oh, it would be great if I were a teacher, it wasn't going to happen. When I got to the point of, wait a minute, I don't want to be a teacher. That's hard. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Let me sit here and eat baklava, right? Then I get stuck with it.
Yep. And in contrast, I mean, there is that part of it too. Like if I were hungry for the authority, if I were like, I deserve this because I don't want it, that would be another trap, right? But
Yeah.
I had to grow into it in terms of trusting that I could be trusted with the authority, and that there are parts of being in a teacher role that I do enjoy, and there are. It's not all loathsome and terrible or anything like that, but you got to kind of warm up to these things. Yeah. That we have a teacher, Mushtaq and I share a teacher who often says that you're getting cooked when you're going through the things that are uncomfortable.
Yep. And it's true.
Yeah.
So who else did that cover everything, Jonathan?
Thumbs
Good.
up. Excellent.
Who else did we need to hear from? We need to hear from Cherie.
Well,
and
Rishabh has
somebody
his hand
else.
up. And
Okay,
then
let's
we
hear
will
from
embarrass
Rishabh first.
Cherie.
Yeah, hi. I just had two quick points. Like the first was I have attended like meetings with the vertical dynamics people, and like with you guys, or even like reading Krishnamurti. So there's like a clear like power dynamic, even if you are like not participating, not saying anything, but like you can directly feel the respect for like everyone in the group. Like it's a group going as well as rather than like as opposed to a single person. So that is like something that is like experiential. So yeah, that's great. Thanks so much.
Cool.
Nice.
And yeah, like one more thing that I wanted to add was yesterday I was just talking to a friend. So I had actually like challenged something what their like teacher had said. So I realized like they were not able to like think in that direction because like it was against what their teacher had said. So like I realized I was encouraging them to like just even think, even if it was wrong, but at least have the capacity to think, even if you are thinking wrong, right? Because that is a faculty that everyone should like. It's a birthright. It's something that everyone should possess. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think
And-
that limits the like thinking capability. Yeah, sorry, you were saying.
No, after you. I don't want to interrupt you because you're onto something here. But
Yeah, no, I just realized like the thinking is blocked because of this like vertical thing, and it could be wrong thinking as well. Wrong thinking can change to right thinking one day, but like to change from no thinking to thinking is a harder like step.
yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
And this harkens back to what Hind was saying in the beginning, and I think Hind actually wants to respond to that. And you make such great points.
Yeah.
Rishabh. Thanks.
But 1 second though, because I have a thought. I must interject here because it's
Yes.
another important thing. And this is true for anybody who truly awakens. And that is, there comes a point where you do not defer to anyone. And it can be shocking when somebody goes, hey, great guru, what's his Nanda said this. And you go, eh. And but they said that. And it's like, I don't defer to this guy. I don't care what he says. What's true is what I experience in my own awakening. And that's true. Even there will come a point where you guys are all going to go, I don't care what Mushtaq says. I know what awake is. And when you know that, you don't need to know other people's opinions about it. That was one of the things for Noor that finally got her through her last barrier. Was I gave her the mantra, I do not defer. Remember that, Noor?
Yeah. I wrote it on my mirror and everything. Yeah. I mean, that's being socialized as I had been, that was an incredibly challenging lesson to learn. And it continues to be a challenging lesson. And yet, letting it be true, especially in my relationship to my teacher, and sometimes plural teachers, because I've had more than one in the past, that was a rule breaking that was necessary. The rules are there to be broken sometimes.
Okay. Jefferson said something here that is important, and let's do that. And then finally, last but not least, get to Cherie and her thoughts.
Okay, so Jefferson says, this Rumi piece has been a wonderful companion and seems appropriate somehow for tonight's conversation. Quote, when school and mosque and minaret get torn down, then dervishes can begin their community. Not until faithfulness turns to betrayal and betrayal into trust can any human being become part of the truth. Thank you.
That's some heavy stuff there.
And thank you, Jefferson. Yeah.
Yes. All right, Cherie, what do you think?
You're not going to talk to Hind?
Hind
We
was
will-
unmuted, yeah.
Was Hind unmuted? I'm sorry, Hind, I can't see your picture up here,
Yeah,
so
I usually
we'll still
take charge
save
of
you
that
to the
stuff.
last, Cherie. I want you to feel like you're last but not least. So Hind,
Oh, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to say, you know, the film Meeting with the Great Men.
Oh, yeah.
I think that there is a good, it can be a good metaphor for the vertical and horizontal teaching. The two teachers that, you know, when the student, they talk about there were two teachers. One talks like firmly and
oh yes.
and the student
Yeah,
can
it says there were two brothers who make it their duty to travel around from monastery to monastery and talk on the work. I'm paraphrasing here. Brother Al and Brother Seth. And they said, when Brother Al speaks, it's like the song of birds. And the words are so incredibly beautiful. And when Brother Seth speaks, he speaks haltingly and in a rough manner. But when Brother Al speaks, what he says goes in one ear and out the other. But when Brother Seth speaks, what he says finds a place in our hearts. And from this, we realize that Brother Al was speaking from his ego and just to our ego. But Brother Seth was speaking from his essence to our essence. That's a paraphrase of that. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
I love that part, by the way.
Yeah. Meetings with Remarkable Men. Check it out.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Hind.
Yeah.
All right, Cherie. What are you thinking about?
Not. It's you just really put it on my shoulders there.
Oh, sorry.
I had a teacher who always said, challenge me. So whenever he teaches, he said, challenge me. I could be wrong, you know, but right now, this is what I perceive as right. So, and this is the way we're going to teach the stretches, and this is what we're going to do, and And then someone would come up and say something, and go, oh, that's actually better. Let's workshop it together. And this is what we have here, where when I was first introduced to you guys, it was about 4 years ago, isn't it? I think. And so
Yeah.
I've watched Noor in her maturation of her teaching become more confident in speaking and actually interjecting over Mushtaq, not waiting for him to finish, but go, oh, and she's got the point. She's got to express it now.
Yeah.
Before that didn't happen 4 years ago, you'd be waiting.
Yeah,
And
or I'd just be so underconfident. It's like, I don't know.
you just swallow that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's got nothing to do with him because, like he said, you know, he has a very strong personality and he's...
No, it was about you finding your voice and able to express it. And so what I've seen with the group is that in this alchemy of refining, and being able to express what we're learning, how we understand it, we are definitely continually reinforcing that flat hierarchy. No one seems to, you guys are steering it and guiding it, so that we've definitely got a theme, we've definitely got things that we're sharing and guiding, and everybody gets to speak. But that's the beauty of it, and that's why I've stayed. And you know, the reason why I first came, I didn't ask the question of Mushtaq at all, how long he's been teaching. I didn't want to know about his lineage and all that sort of thing, because I've been exposed to that before. And I thought, it really doesn't matter to me. I want to know who the person is right now. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, because I thought, no, I didn't ask that question. But you know, my essence is actually experiencing whether Mushtaq is an authentic person, Noor is an authentic person, and everybody else that's coming in is coming from that essence instead of just their ego. And that's the difference of other groups that I've been participating in, and thinking, you know what? No, that's not quite right. I can't grow in that particular environment. But this environment is about that we can bring up a question and challenge. I think, I don't get that, or I don't understand that. That's I think a beautiful thing about this group, that you're helping us do our alchemy.
Well, damn, thank you. I mean, I appreciate both sides of that. Like, I love, as you say, just kind of coming in and seeing the now, like the snapshot of the now, responding to that and seeing if it's a good fit for you. And also, as Jefferson was saying, like, and Mushtaq was saying, okay, so now you're talking the talk, but have you walked the walk? What are you up to? What have you been up to? And I think that it's not that we have different priorities, but when we enter into this work, we're bringing all kinds of stories and experiences from the past. And how do we integrate those into the work that we're doing in the present in a way that is going to support us going forward? So for you, given your experiences, the snapshot is the priority. What's going on now? What is the feeling I'm getting now? For someone who has had the experiences of cultic manipulations and stuff.
Oh, I was born for one.
That's so true, Cherie. You've been there, done that in your own way. I didn't mean to.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
Got excommunicated at 15. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone just kind of processes that in their own unique ways. And you have to contextualize your learning environment in a way that is conducive to learning.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so when I actually recently looked back and Googled who I used to be with, and it just like, oh wow, they've changed it into evangelical Christians now. Oh, wow. And I don't have any connection to it, those people of the past and everything. And that's what makes me move forward. And looking at other different cults, I look at that as an interest, but not something that I immerse myself in, because I find that I haven't got time for that. Oh, it's really interesting that people bring this up. Oh, well, that'll save me another reading. I don't have to go there.
I understand that. Yes.
To get off there.
I have a responsibility to learn, but I sometimes feel like, oh, gross. I don't want to deal with that. Yeah.
I'll leave that to you, Noor.
Thanks.
That's all I.
Well,
no, that was.
I think that's everybody, because Levita had to take off.
Yeah, I think she just had an hour, and yeah, that's a sign, I guess.
So hopefully,
shut the hell up.
Yeah, and I'm getting hungry, which
right,
means it's time to quit.
Everyone, thank you. You.
All right, let's
made
switch
this
over
such
to
a rich conversation.
gallery view, and
All
we can
right,
say
everybody.
goodbye.
Bye, everybody.